Hello and welcome to News Centre. I am Ashmit Kumar. In what comes as a big win for the Aam Aadmi Party's top brass, a Delhi High Court has discharged former Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal and his erstwhile Deputy and Finance Minister Manish Sisodia in the liquor policy case. All 23 accused in the case were acquitted by the court. The court also pulled up the CBI while highlighting that there was no cogent evidence against Kejriwal and no prima facie case against Sisodia or the other accused. The court has also said that the CBI charge sheet contained many lacunae and was not supported by witness statements. It said that there was no overarching conspiracy or criminal intent in the excise policy. Following the decision, Aam Aadmi Party leaders lashed out at the Bharatiya Janata Party, accusing it of building a fake case against them. The CBI has said that it will challenge the order in the Delhi High Court. Let's break down the case. For the benefit of our viewers, a brief history. The corruption allegations were first flagged in 2022 when then Delhi Chief Secretary Manish Kumar submitted a report alleging procedural irregularities in the formulation and implementation of the 2021 excise policy. The policy was later scrapped in 2022. The policy shifted to fully privatized model. The report termed this decision taken by Sisodia, who was then the excise minister, as arbitrary and unilateral, alleging that it caused a financial loss of 580 crore rupees to the exchequer. Following that report, parallel probes by the CBI and the ED were launched. While the CBI case has now been folded, the ED case still stands. A visibly emotional Kejriwal broke down after the court verdict. He said that he had faith in the judiciary.
हमारे ऊपर कीचड़ फेंका गया। 24 घंटे टीवी चैनलों के ऊपर डिबेट चलते थे, खबरें दिखाई जाती थी, केजरीवाल भ्रष्ट है, केजरीवाल भ्रष्ट है। हो गया सर, संभालिए सर अपने आप, संभालिए हिम्मत सर, पीछे लाओ मत भाई। केजरीवाल भ्रष्ट नहीं है।
Well, speaking at the press conference just hours later, Kejriwal threw a challenge to the BJP. Here's what he said.
पूरी दिल्ली का बेड़ा गर्क कर दिया। सबसे बड़ा खामियाजा मोदी जी और अमित शाह जी की सत्ता की हवस, उसका सबसे बड़ा खामियाजा दिल्ली के 3 करोड़ लोगों ने भुगता है। दिल्ली के लोगों से जाके पूछो। आज मैं चैलेंज करता हूं मोदी जी को। मोदी जी, हिम्मत है, दिल्ली में दोबारा चुनाव करा के दिखा दो। 10 से ज्यादा तुम्हारी सीट आ जाए, मैं राजनीति छोड़ दूंगा।
Well, for more on this, we're now joined by Senior Advocate Dushyant Dave and Supreme Court Advocate Vikram Hegde. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Dave, coming to you first. The court is very clear that there is no overarching conspiracy at play here, raising questions about the investigation itself, saying that it's based more on conjecture, not supported by evidence, not supported by material, and taking a dig at the conduct of the CBI. To your mind, with this investigation having started in 2022, 4 years later, the Delhi court now showing that investigation the door, what message does it send out with respect to the conduct of the CBI?
Well, before I answer that, Ashmit, I must say one thing, that it is a 558-page judgment which you forwarded to me. And I quickly glanced through it. I must confess, I didn't have time to read it thoroughly. But I quickly glanced through it. And I must say, hats off to the judge, Mr. Jitendra Singh, special judge of the Delhi court. Outstanding judgment. That judgment considers every aspect of what is expected at the stage of framing of the charge, whether the accused is prima facie guilty or not, whether there is a strong suspicion to proceed against the accused or not. The judge has considered every aspect. He has considered the law. He has considered, the facts. He's considered the excise policy. He has considered how excise policy moved from, department to department, including discussions with then Lieutenant Governor. He has discussed, the opinions which was produced by all kinds of people who were objecting to the policy because they were likely to lose out. Opinions from former judges like Justice Gogoi, Justice Balakrishnan, and others. And judge has, has threadbare considered the entire evidence, including the evidence of the, oral evidence of some of the witnesses which were recorded under many provisions of the law. And the learned judge then comes to a conclusion that there is here no conspiracy, there is no illegality. Everything has happened openly, transparently, and it has been discussed by everybody across the board. And therefore, he says that the policy was not vitiated by any kind of a fraud. There is nothing, a violation of the Prevention of Corruption Act. If PMLA provisions are not retracted, and the judge therefore says, which he concludes, that it would be really sad to continue this prosecution even for a day long when there is no evidence whatsoever. So judge has really brilliantly analyzed everything. I must say, these kind of orders, these kind of judges really restore our faith in the judicial system at the lowest level. And I therefore must say hats off to the judge. Having said that, use or misuse of the investigating agencies against your political opponents. It is sad. We are in a democracy. It's a vibrant democracy. And, there is no reason why government should use these kind of powers to run after opponents. Because ultimately, healthy democracy needs opposition. It needs multilateral parties. And if you don't respect multilateral parties and multilateral governments at the state level, then I think it's really going to result into some kind of a dictatorship, which we don't want. And I don't think even the Bharatiya Janata Party wants. So this shows that the abuse which took place, the CBI's failure, I mean, the judge is very right that the investigating agency, CBI, has not been able to bring out the case, even an iota of material, which is so right. Therefore, I think it really reflects very poorly. And I mean, far from CBI making a statement that they are going to appeal, they should say we will not appeal. They didn't appeal in Mr. Amit Shah's case when he was discharged in a far more serious case. So why should CBI file an appeal against this order? I mean, it would be travesty of justice if CBI were to pick out, people and file appeals when they choose, and when they don't choose, they don't file appeals. So I think this is a judgment which doesn't deserve to be, appealed against, and it should be accepted in all grace by the CBI and other authorities.
Well, the CBI, at least for now, is indicating that they will be knocking on the doors of the Delhi High Court. But let me also bring in Mr. Hegde. Mr. Hegde, coming to you again, a lot has changed between when this investigation was started, 2022, and now. A sitting chief minister was sent to jail. In the interim, we saw the elections as well. The political complexion of Delhi NCR changed. And now we find that the court is saying that this investigation was actually quite not. There wasn't enough material and substance behind that. Does this then raise the question of accountability of some of these officers, of the investigation officers of the CBI?
I think this is a fit case for raising that question and going into the question of what sort of culpability should be raised on officers who mount investigations which are not really sustainable. In fact, in this very order, the court has directed the initiation of appropriate departmental proceedings against the respective investigating officers for having brought in some of the accused persons despite there being no material against them whatsoever. Now, that may be on a slightly more focused version, but considering the sort of larger political impact that these kinds of prosecutions have, perhaps this is a good case to start looking into these things as to what is the responsibility of officers, what is the responsibility of prosecutors when they mount these sorts of prosecutions. And this is a concept that has been sort of recognized in all sorts of law commissions or the commissions for reform in criminal law as well, where they say that even if there is a travesty of prosecution, that is also bad. That is, if there is only 2% convictions, it means that we are prosecuting 98% of the people very wrongly.
Fair enough. Speaking of the conduct of the CBI, Mr. Dave, let me come to you again. The one practice that the court has frowned upon is the practice of CBI deployed in this case, flagged by the legal team of Arvind Kejriwal as well, that there's an accused in this matter. Pressure is applied in the form of interrogation. He's then flipped into an approver. And then as an approver, that statement is used to corner the other accused. This is a practice that has been frowned upon by this court. Does this again raise more questions about how the investigation was conducted by the CBI in the manner of flipping of accused persons into approvers?
Well, I think CBI and its investigating officers knew that there was no case, there was no material, and therefore they latched on to this approver. And as we all know, the approver also gave some financial reward to the Bharatiya Janata Party through electoral bonds, as were reported in the newspapers. I think it was a gross misuse of power by the CBI and the investigating officers. And the learned judge is absolutely right that these kind of investigating officers should be proceeded against. But let us understand one thing. The CBI is, as Chief Justice Lodha had once very rightly remarked, it's a caged parrot. CBI here was acting at the instance of, the Bharatiya Janata Party at the center and the Home Ministry. And the CBI therefore had very little discretion. They were given a brief that you have to frame these people. And the whole idea to frame these people and Aam Aadmi Party and its leadership was to ensure that in the next elections in Delhi they lose. And they lost because of that. Because you tried to destroy their credibility, their personal character was assassinated, and you used entire media to really go after them, which we saw. So therefore, this case does reflect a very, very serious, kind of erosion in public life, particularly in criminal jurisprudence. This is happening again and again and again and again in large number of cases which are today being filed by central investigating agencies like CBI and the ED and income tax authorities, as also the state policies where the Bharatiya Janata Party is in power across the nation. So it should stop. Frankly, I really feel that this is a time when perhaps people like the learned Attorney General, who is very highly respected, should step in and should advise the government that this kind of nonsense must stop, because it doesn't give us a good picture. See, everybody across the world is watching this. Don't forget, people think that this is only confined to India. No, it's not confined to India. World over now, these news travels and people understand what's happening in India, what's happening to its beautiful democracy. We are the largest democracy in the world, and we must sustain it in every form. And therefore, to target your opposition in this fashion by using this kind of raw power really reflects extremely poorly on the part of government.
On a slightly different tangent, Mr. Hegde, if I may come to you, another aspect that the court has spent some time on is cautioning that only because an intended policy doesn't quite play out the way it was initially aimed at, that should not be reduced to a criminal conspiracy, that will paralyze governance going forward. Just want to get your thoughts on that caution being given by the court.
In fact, that caution is very well placed, and it is even in keeping with the legislative policy of the union government as well, which has brought in 2018 an amendment to the Prevention of Corruption Act, where some sort of protection has been brought in for decisions taken and recommendations made which are of a policy nature. The court in this order has also identified that just because there is a private party who's making a profit, that does not mean that this is an outcome of corruption. So on that perspective, yes, there is a set of decisions that is taken administratively. That decision may even have gone contrary to some other recommendations that have come previously, saying that all of this should be kept in government control or whatever other recommendation was there. But overall, a government is free to take, or it should have the sort of play in the joints to take a decision where some sort of profit will be made by some parties. But that does not necessarily mean that all of this is arising out of corruption. And that is an observation that this court has made in this order. But there's also the other aspect that what then is the standard that needs to be met? That over here, when they were prosecuting for offences under 7, 7A and 8 of the Prevention of Corruption Act, they ought to have shown, the CBI ought to have shown that not only is there some profit being made by some private parties,
right,
there is some sort of quid pro quo being demanded and accepted by the public servants who have been implicated over here, either directly or indirectly. Sure, that is where the CBI failed to demonstrate before the court, that it failed to show any material which satisfied the court that yes, there has been some kind of quid pro quo, as a result of which this policy came to be tweaked.
I'll just have to come in for want of time. I'll just have to interject for want of time. We're completely out, but that's clearly something.
I just want to add one thing, Ashmit. Ashmit, I want to add one thing.
Yes, Mr. Dave, just a quick 30 seconds.
Yes.
quick
I
30
must,
seconds.
as Hegde rightly points out, Supreme Court has consistently held that in policy matters, writ court should not interfere. Two, that this was a policy which had gone through various departments, and Supreme Court has said in Nandalal Jaiswal way back in the 80s that if there is an interdepartmental discussion which results in policy, you can't say it was discriminatory or arbitrary. And three, most important, as a result of this case, Delhi citizens have suffered loss of thousands of crores of rupees in last 5 years. Who is going to compensate? The alcohol which people want to consume is not available. People rush to Noida and Gurgaon to buy it. And Delhi, government and Delhi's people have therefore suffered in terms of revenue. So these are all aspects which should be taken into account by the CBI before it really thinks of filing an appeal. And I would hope and pray that CBI is well advised not to file appeal.
Well, a strong push there by Mr. Dave that no further action should be taken by the CBI. But nonetheless, sources within the investigating agency saying that they will be knocking on the doors of the Delhi High Court. We're completely out of time. I'd like to thank both of our panelists for sharing their perspective on this critical judgment. But with that, it's time now for slipping into a very short break. But coming up on the other side, streaming giant Netflix has pulled out from the deal after Warner Brothers Discovery Board said that Paramount Skydance revised bid was the superior offer. That and more on the other side. Welcome back to News Center. Now, the race to buy Warner Brothers Discovery's studio and streaming assets is coming to an end. Streaming giant Netflix has pulled out from the deal after WBD's board said that Paramount Skydance's revised bid was the superior offer. Earlier this week, Paramount had revised its bid to buy Warner Brothers assets to $31 per share in an all-cash deal. Remember, Netflix had granted WBD a 7-day waiver to re-engage with Paramount, and this has now resulted in the higher bid. CNBC's Karen So brings us more.
Netflix has announced it will rescind its offer for the studio and streaming assets of Warner Brothers Discovery after the WBD board signalled Paramount Skydance's latest bid for the whole of the group was actually a superior offer. Paramount's new offer of $31 a share came after Netflix granted a 7-day waiver for Warner Brothers to re-engage with Paramount for the company to as co-CEO Ted Sarandos told CNBC, quote, put their money where their mouth is. Netflix then declined to raise its offer of $27.75 a share for WBD's studio and streaming assets, describing a deal to purchase them as no longer financially attractive. You may recall that very hostile tactics deployed by Paramount trying to re-engage with the Warner Brothers Discovery board. They'd already thrown their weight behind Netflix.
Well, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of News Center. More news and updates will continue right here.
Good evening. Let's do it right with Nuvama presents The Wealth Brief, where today's market moves are decoded to guide your wealth journey. Market closes sharply lower in a broad-based sell-off, with all major indices falling over 1%. Nifty slips below 25,200, dragged by heavyweights HDFC Bank, ICICI Bank, and Bharti Airtel. Sensex drops 961 points to 81,287, while Nifty declines 318 points to 25,179. Nifty Bank and Mid-Cap indices also tumble. Realty and capital market stocks lead losses. Only Nifty IT ends higher. Among stocks, Vishal Megamart plunges nearly 8% on a large block deal. Sada Energy and Minerals gains 7% after the Supreme Court dismisses pleas against the SKS Power acquisition. Dixon Technologies rises over 4%, while Tata Motors CV advances after a bullish brokerage call. Investments in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.
let's go one take up. Stand by.
So much pressure. Okay.
Yeah, I'm ready one time.
Okay.
Stand by. 5, 4, 3, 2.
Well, there's a lot that's happening in the world of artificial intelligence, but the top 2 stories today tell us exactly where the industry is headed, and none of them are comfortable. First is Jack Dorsey's Block. The payments company behind Cash App and Square is cutting more than 4,000 roles, going from over 10,000 employees to under 6,000 in just one move. The business, however, is not struggling. Gross profit is still growing. Dorsey's explanation was direct. Intelligence tools combined with smaller, flatter teams have fundamentally changed how the company can operate, and AI is not replacing a failing business. It is helping run a healthy one, but with fewer people here. Markets have noticed that the stock jumped up to 25% since that announcement. Jack Dorsey has added an important clarification. He says Block did overhire during the pandemic and admits that the company was running duplicate structures between Square and Cash App until mid-2024. All of this, and that he also made a key point that the goal now is much higher efficiency. So Block is now targeting more than $2 million in gross profit per employee, roughly 4 times its pre-COVID level of about $500,000 per person. Dorsey's message is quite clear, and this may be correcting past hiring, but majorly it is structurally running the company leaner in the AI era. eBay told a quieter but a related story when it came to layoffs. But now here's where the contrast that matters. While companies are cutting people, they're spending aggressively on the machines that power AI. Dell now expects roughly $50 billion in AI server revenue this year. Its AI server backlog already stands at about $43 billion. Infrastructure revenue surged more than 70%. The same companies pulling back on headcount are now pouring capital into compute. That is not a contradiction, but pretty much like a strategy. And then there's Anthropic, one of the fastest growing companies in AI right now, is in a very public dispute with the US defense establishment. The company says it will not allow Claude, its model, to be used for fully autonomous weapons or large-scale domestic violence on Americans. The Pentagon maintains that it operates within existing legal frameworks, but discussions over contract, language, all of them remain unresolved. CEO Dario Amodei says that he supports using artificial intelligence to defend democracies, but argues that frontier systems are not yet reliable enough for fully autonomous weapons. He has also raised concerns about AI systems aggregating large amounts of personal data. What makes this moment notable is the tension at the center of it. US officials have stressed the importance of access to advanced AI capabilities. Anthropic, meanwhile, is pushing for tighter written safeguards. Lawmakers have begun weighing in, and the dispute is quickly becoming as much as political as technological. Here's what Dario Amodei told Shireen Bhan in conversation on the sidelines of India AI Summit about regulations and helping Pentagon.
Ladies and gentlemen, the India-EU trade deal happened earlier this year, and it was really the mother of all deals. And it was followed up by what many call the India-US trade deal, or the father of all deals, as many are talking about. But clearly, the India-EU trade deal was extremely comprehensive, and it brings together 1/4 of the global economy. I won't waste any more time. I want to open this up to our panelists. All three of them have been working very closely on the India-EU deal and the India-EFTA deal as well. So let me begin with Ambassador Ackerman, the German ambassador to India. How would you rate the importance of this deal at a time when the relations between US and Europe are deteriorating? You've paused the ratification of the deal with the United States because of the Supreme Court ruling. Does the relationship with India now become doubly important?
So thank you very much, and it's great to be here. But I'd like to say the difference between all the trade deals with the US and the trade deals with Europe is that the deals with the US are no free trade deals. No? I mean, this is a deal with tariffs. With Europe, you have a free trade deal, and that's, I think, a commitment and a conviction that you are promoters and believers in free trade. And I think you cannot underestimate the importance of this deal between EU and India. It brings together an enormous market. 450 million Europeans and 1.4 billion Indians form one single market. And this is, a clear signal to the world, a message to the world that we are the promoters of and the believers in free trade. And therefore, I think the mother of all deals is a bit of, it has a little pathos in the word, but it's not wrong. Whereas, whether the deal with the US is the father of all deals, I would be not so sure.
No, you're absolutely right, because it covers almost 97% or 98% of goods traded between both nations. It has a mobility partnership as well. Ambassador Heslev, how do you see this deal contributing to the growth of our economies? How is Sweden looking to leverage the fruits of the India-EU trade deal?
Thank you very much. I think you said it yourself. It covers almost 97% of all trade. But we should not only see it as a trade agreement, even though we call it the FTA, because it's a signal when it comes to investments. It's a signal when it comes to engaging with one another. It's a signal to develop together, not only make in India, but make with India, make with Europe. So that's, let's say, the broader signal. And that's actually the growth signal if we look ahead. And for those who are not yet in Europe or not yet in India, maybe the barriers were too high. Maybe the entrance ticket was too expensive in the past. With the free trade agreement, with what it brings, you lower those barriers, and I think that's where we will see the big growth and the big change. SMEs, middle-sized companies, those are the ones that create the jobs. Those are the ones that create the growth. And we will see it in India, we will for sure see it in Sweden.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, while the India-EU free trade agreement will get ratified formally and will be off the block by sometime next year, because it will go through a period of legal scrubbing, then the text has to be converted in all EU languages, it has to be approved by the EU Parliament, so it is still a long process off. But the EFTA has already happened, it's operational. Ambassador Steiner, could you give us a sense of how this is benefiting Norway and India right now? And what is the kind of uptick in trade between India and EFTA regions that you see?
Well, that's right. The Trade and Economic Partnership Agreement between the EFTA countries and India entered into force 1st October last year. So it's already in force. The EFTA group, for those who don't know, there are 4 countries. It's Norway, Switzerland, Iceland and Liechtenstein. 4 small countries that are not part of the EU, but all rich countries and altogether quite big economies. And for Norway, this Trade and Economic Partnership Agreement is a milestone in the relationship to India, for sure. It is very important, and as it's being said here, the trade agreement with the EU is not only a trade agreement. The agreement with EFTA is for sure not. It's called Trade and Economic Partnership Agreement. It also has a commitment from the EFTA countries to promote investments. So this is very important to us. Let me also say, though, I'm sitting here with my German and Swedish colleague. Sweden is our neighboring country, and Germany is the biggest market that Norway is exporting to. 66% of the Norwegian export is going to the EU. And therefore, I also think that the EU FTA with India is important for Norway, because a lot of the things that we are selling to other countries outside Europe, they're being designed in Norway and then produced in maybe another European country, maybe in Sweden, maybe in Germany. And therefore also this it will be a bigger ecosystem that will work very well together, and I also think will benefit the Indian economy.
All right, thank you for those opening remarks, Ambassador. Ambassador Ackerman, if I were to ask you, how does this bring the two economies together in the field of manufacturing? The reason why I ask that is because be it Europe, be it India, both have to now stand up for their own security, defense, economic security as well. In such times, how do we foster a closer economic and manufacturing partnership specifically?
So I think these are two elements to your question. One is the question of, will India grow in its manufacturing capacities for, delivering to Europe, for example? And I'm, as Jan said, convinced that this FTA will be a booster for investment, for FTA in India. I'll tell you one example. The Indo-German Chamber of Commerce had an online seminar on what the FTA would mean for companies in Germany. And we had 1,800 companies signing in for this webinar as we speak, and that's an enormous amount of companies being interested in coming into it. So I think manufacturing, you will see that once this thing is ratified next year, by the end of this year maybe even, we'll have a growth of FDI in India. Now, your second part is defense and security, and as you are aware, the EU has also agreed upon with India on a security roadmap and a security partnership. And I think in our countries, respective countries, we are all very interested in setting up a meaningful defense partnership with India that includes production, that includes manufacturing for German, Swedish, European defense interests. We still hope that this country to my right will join the European Union one day, so I cannot speak for Norway here, but one day hopefully I can. But with Sweden and Germany and France and Italy, I think India as a security hub for production is growingly interesting for us.
Right. If I may ask a follow-up question, Ambassador, and that would be about our defense relationship. We've had a close defense relationship in the past, but we see that the submarine deal between ThyssenKrupp and MDL is in final stages. If that were to happen, how will this probably solidify or strengthen our defense partnership for the future?
So I think the submarine deal is, I'm very confident that in the coming weeks we'll see some movement on that side. This will be a game changer for our bilateral security cooperation. And you'll see here again that parts of this production, of course, will take place in India, the biggest part, the larger part. And that means that, ThyssenKrupp will set up shop here in India. MDL, its venture partner in Mumbai, will produce. And I think that's a wonderful example how, India and European countries can join hands and come up with a product that is to the use of all of us.
Right. Ambassador Theslev, to ask you about where we are right now with the India-EU FTA. Has the legal scrubbing begun? By when do you expect the first draft to be circulated among EU nations?
I know that the legal scrub has started. The prospect for that, the time prospect, because it's not only done on the European side, it's done on the Indian side. I don't want to predict that, but if you look at other free trade agreements that India has entered into, or even other partners have entered into, even before the agreements enter into force, this starts a process, both in India and in the other countries. What is our task now, before the entry into force of the agreement, is to pave the way, prepare for it. We have to sell this agreement internally in Europe, internally in India. Explain what are the benefits, what is changing, how can you access a market that was inaccessible before. I know for the SMEs, the EU is setting up focal points, both in Brussels but also in India, to see how one can facilitate that process. In the case of my country, and I'm sure it's the case of others also, we will also have campaigns. In Sweden, we call it Time for India, and in India, we'll call it Time for Sweden. But it's really, this is not a waste of time. This is actually the run-up to the entry into force, and we should make the most out of it, and we will.
If I were to follow up, how can India make the most out of it? Over the last 1 year, there have been a number of reforms, bringing down the GST rates to 2. Deregulation has been a constant exercise. Quality control orders, I think almost 70 of them have been done away with. What more can be done in terms of the ease of doing business? Because I believe non-tariff barriers will be a very important part of the FTA.
No, a lot is happening, and a lot has been done. I think to reap the full benefits out of the agreement that has been concluded, we have to continue that process. And there are things, you mentioned the QCOs, a lot of them have been done away with, but there are some who still remain. We are very happy that the intellectual property rules were included in the negotiations, but there are still, I think, things to be done on the IP rules. There are, if you look at, for example, something that is very close to our heart is the green technology, green transition, decarbonization. There are still, between different states in India, individual rules that are for that state, but not nationwide. So all these things, the harmonization of rules doesn't stop. And we are convinced, and we see that India is committed to do that, and that's what we should pursue.
Right. Ambassador Sena, from your point of view, are there certain recommendations for ease of doing business, something that can be done better?
Well, I agree with my Swedish colleague here. A lot is being done. A lot has been done, and a lot is happening as we speak. We see a big commitment from the Indian side to try and ease the doing of business in this country. For us, the Trade and Economic Partnership Agreement in itself is something that is making it easier for our businesses. They are looking more positively at India because of that. And also, there is a particular EFTA office set up in Invest India to help those businesses who would like to invest in India, and where they can also raise concerns that they have. So we see a lot is being done, but this is a very complex society. It's the most populous country in the world. It's 28 states here, and meaning 28 different set of regulations also. So this is complex, and of course there is still work to be done. We just see goodwill for that work to be done also. So we have a good cooperation.
Right. If I were to ask you about mobility, mobility is going to be a big part of the India-UK FTA, India-EU FTA, and with Norway as well. How do you see the requirement of high technology professionals in Norway increasing in the coming years, and what is the opportunity for Indian professionals there?
Well, there are a lot of opportunities, and in the last 10-15 years there has been a lot of Indians coming to Norway. Norway is still a very small country compared to India, and also compared to other European countries. But we have about 20,000 Indian professionals in Norway now, and in relation to our population, it's quite a lot. They are very active in the tech business, in the service industries, and we also see the TEPA is helping in this way. It's helping for more focus. We also have Norwegian tech companies. The biggest Norwegian banks, they have big operations in India, so they also employ Indian professionals here in India. And this is definitely easing up, and it's happening also as we speak.
All right, I'll just take the final set of questions. Ambassador Ackerman, when it comes to the automobile industry, how satisfied are you with the kind of tariff arrangements that have been arrived at? German companies, European car makers, Volvo, they've been around in India for decades. But do you feel that you'll get more market access now?
Yes, I think for us, the automotive chapter in the FTA is a good chapter, and I think it will lead to more investment also by the German car makers here in India. You know, all the big car makers are here, and they produce their cars, and I think they see an enormous potential for their upper echelon, high quality cars here in India, and the FTA will, for us, be a huge step forward in that direction.
All right, we've completely run out of time, but I'd like to thank Ambassador Theslev, Ambassador Ackerman, and Ambassador Steiner for being with us here on this panel on the India-EU Free Trade Agreement. This is a momentous year for India-EU relations, and let's hope this FTA gets ratified fast and we're able to enjoy the fruits of this agreement. Thank you.
It's great to be here on the Rising Bharat stage with three gentlemen who are going to talk to us about the India opportunity and the India advantage. Thank you very much for being a wonderful audience. Hitesh, you talked about democratization of finance in the country. He wants to get people to open demat accounts so that they can make money in the stock markets, and then get Santosh Iyer sales so that people can go out there and buy a Mercedes-Benz and hopefully send business Rajiv Memani's way as an auditor. So you've got an example of India's circular economy in motion here. But Rajiv, let's start with the India opportunity and the India advantage at this point in time. We started our post-lunch session with the team from Dhurandhar and who've created quite a storm, not just with the movie, but also with that iconic song. What we've seen happen in the last 12 months is deal after deal, trade agreement after trade agreement. India has been out there batting on the front foot, saying it is time for us to get competitive. It is not time to be protectionist. It's time for us to do business with the world. That's been a sea change in our attitude, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you look at last 12 months, and if you were to pick up three big changes, I would say the first one is the speed at which reforms are happening. And for scaling up, that's absolutely critical, whether it's on ease of doing business, whether it's improving the competitiveness. Lots of sectors, if you were to reflect back 3 years back, they were not there. Those sectors are there. And government is putting a lot of pressure, whether it's on data centers, electronics, nuclear. I mean, you can go on and on, medical devices, others, and I think that's been fantastic. The second is the way India is now re-engaging globally through FTAs, through bilateral agreements, and I think that's been fantastic. And you're right, I think earlier when we looked at FTAs, it sounded like, you were making Pakiza. It would take 6-7 years to make, 8 years to make. Everyone knew it would be a great movie. but it was taking a lot of time to do that. And suddenly in the last 12 months, 15 months, before one FTA is signed, the other is ready to go, then the other is ready to go, then the next sequel is ready. So I think the speed is just amazing. And
so we've gone from Pakiza to Durandar.
Durandar, yes, yes. And the second, I really feel that FTAs, while people only talk in terms of reduction of tariffs, but as we visit various countries, whenever FTAs are being done, I think it's creating a business platform, which just opens the engagement in terms of investments, mobility, trade, tourism, everything. And it's a government to government, government to business, business to business partnership. And I'm of the view that it'll make India, the supply chain piece that we were looking at, whether you call it China +1 or whatever +1, as we do the FTAs, as we do ease of doing business, as we do reforms, I think the whole thing of supply chain resilience, of manufacturing coming in India in a big way, I think this will provide great impetus. And the third big change, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, and he covered it, is AI. So I feel that if businesses are looking at scaling up and theme, I think these three are going to be great enablers for scaling businesses up.
I'll talk about AI in just a second. No conversation is complete without addressing the AI issue, but Santosh,